Hi everyone! It's only the start of 2025 and already there are even more people on the planet in great distress. So I know it's not a happy new year to begin with, but for those of you here watching, thank you for your support and taking the time. I hope you're safe and well, and may that continue throughout the year for all of us. And because these are not great times for everyone, I'll start right off the bat by saying that this is not going to be just another negative video jumping on the Let's Bash Mondo bandwagon in light of their recent QC fails. So before Mondo MOTU fans start raging, just calm down. And for the Mondo haters, this is not a total beatdown review on Mondo figures either. Instead, through this Teela Deluxe figure, which is probably an old fixture by now in every other ToyTuber's 2024 top 10 videos, I'll be comparing some of the known issues and highlights with some of the past and present offerings out there in the market, and flag why Mondo simply must do better. Of course, I'm a nobody with no action figure production career background, so I don't expect Peter or Hector or anybody else from Mondo to pay any attention. But I am a lifelong MOTU fan as mentioned elsewhere in my channel videos, so anything I can do to potentially help push the figure quality in this line to even higher standards for the future ahead, I'm just gonna put it out there. I also don't intend to be another of those grumpy old guys dissing on just about every modern release. So I hope it's clear that this is not meant to throw shade on anyone's work in Mondo for these MOTU figures. If they start hitting those new Marvel Spider-Man lows, that would be a different story though. So for anyone who's watched a review of this figure or owns this figure, you'd already know what Mondo currently brings to the table. A solid 1/6 representation of the MOTU character with their most well-known weapons and mixed media costume design, packed in a box with eye candy illustration. In fact, it's virtually an upsized revised take on the MOTU Classics Teela, which is already the gold standard for Teela action figures. The Mondo Deluxe version usually also comes with additional hit portraits and sometimes other bonus stuff too. No matter which character, I think it's not an exaggeration to say that Mondo has not made a single derpy looking MOTU figure since releasing He-Man in his deluxe version. And if that's the case, why does Mondo need to do better then? The first and most fundamental reason is cost. Now before the net trolls jump in and start telling my poor ass to piss off and stay away from Mondo MOTU figures if I can't afford them, I should clarify that cost is different from price. Price is simply the number tag that's attached to the figures on the website. I'm aware that the price takes into consideration how much material costs go into tooling and making the figure, how much profit is needed to cover the salaries of everyone contributing to the figures, from the uncredited factory workers painting the plastic, to Maggie sorting the shipping labels, to the nice box corner tabs and magnets that have been switched out for cardboard girdles and Velcro tips, and even the licensing money that Mondo needs to pay to its Mattel overlord as well. And yes, prices have gone up everywhere, not just for Mondo figures, and will continue to go up. From about $160 for the regular Merman figure in the pre-COVID and pre-Funko days, to more than $200 for a regular Mondo MOTU figure now, I won't be surprised if those price tags continue to inch upwards. Even for those of you rolling in money, I'm pretty sure no one thinks that Mondo MOTU figures are a bargain for the price tag. If so, there should be just as many Skyslat YouTube reviews as all the faker and scareglow ones popping up right now. So clearly, hard choices are already being made, because I'm also talking about what it costs the Mondo MOTU collector. It costs money, for sure, and actually more delivery money if you're not lucky enough to benefit from free shipping in the US and select territories. Yep, sucks to be you and me, dear fellow international collectors, especially depending on where you live. With about 50 figures in the line so far and costs averaging $300 per figure when you map it out, how many customers out there have the appetite to put out $15,000 and the space to house their figures and their beautiful boxes if the quality isn't exceeding or surpassing every last penny that it's costing? And oh yeah, speaking of the cost and space, you need space for lights and dioramas if you want your figures to look the way Raul photographs them. Squeezing them all into IKEA details is neat, but not really unique, and won't work if that Mondo Grayskull or Stink Mountain comes along. Not to mention all those Super 7, HasLab, and Mattel Creation behemoths that have finally come home to roost after these few years. So if it's time to consider the cost of having to sacrifice other collections to make more space, that means those MOTU figures really have to be the best of the best. But are they the best of the best? Which brings me to the second factor, aesthetics. Last year, a whole bunch of 1/6 figures from various properties were released, as in any other year, including this ChunLi figure from Starman that made the internet rounds for all the obvious reasons. But just using this as a point of reference, this figure cost me about $170 including delivery and came with 2 soft good outfits and 1 head sculpt, which is comparatively cheaper but also lighter on adornments and licensing fees, I know. But what a head sculpt. Rolling eyeballs with a piercing finish that stares into your soul, sharp hair detail, and beautifully subtle paintwork for a complexion, the head clearly does much of the heavy lifting for this figure. Apart from, again, the obvious reasons. Maybe the Mondo purists are going to come out swinging and say they're putting in their own artistic spin, and they're not doing Hot Toys realism because they're not Hot Toys. But neither is Starman, and yet their ChunLi really shows how you can take a prominent pop culture character and still strike the right balance between giving it your own stylized interpretation while hitting the Hot Toys high bar of photorealism. Clearly, there are Chinese factories out there capable of executing that level of production quality, as long as their client wants to take that direction. Not that I doubt the Mondo creative team's capabilities, but if we take this Duncan comparison as another case in point, it's really hard for me not to want Mondo to challenge themselves to another level of artistry. Human faces are always going to be hard to do, and luckily there are way more monsters than human characters in the MOTU universe, which does make it more forgiving for artistic license. Of course, Hot Toys figures aren't perfect. Early models have not aged that well. And this ChunLi figure isn't free of flaws either, as you can see from other reviews, but it isn't the only figure to hit the aesthetic notes at a lower cost point. As Marvel Legends' Cassie Lang packing accessory with Kang isn't entirely the right scale, but it's got comparable face paint apps done sharp and clean enough for what it costs as an accessory. And even though this Teela is ambitious enough to try and match the classics version in design finesse, that bar set by the 4 Horsemen is already more than 10 years old. Meanwhile, Hot Toys also already established ocular LEDs in Terminator head sculpts 10 years ago, but the Mondo Faker exclusive is still stuck with non-illuminating heads. Adding eyeball articulation, electronics, and all the bells and whistles just adds on to the very same cost I was just talking about. But if the prices keep getting higher and the resources keep getting scarcer, there's an obligation to make sure that every Mondo MOTU creative output should really push the envelope like it's going to be the last. Because it may very well be the last, you never know. But it's always going to be tough to do so. Because a little bit of wariness inevitably sets in when you start going through the motion of repaints and recycling to feed the tooling beast, and I recognize that Mondo does put in the effort to try and add some extras when they churn out the variants, but when that churn eats into the QC, that hits the third and most important factor of quality for me. Yes, the Mondo figure has actual plastic heft and definitely feels more robust than a silicone body, and has all the body sculpt and paintwork to show for it. But when your asking price is inching higher than your competition's, you have to reflect that value in every aspect, including engineering considerations and manufacturing consistency. Having ankle joint tolerance that cannot support the figure's material weight, color finishes that don't line up between head and body, inconsistent paintwork on eyes that make Teela look like she's just snorted some powder puff, are various signs of a factory operation in its teething phase, not at the peak of its powers. Just like even the classics figures suffered from loose joints in the beginning. Now, Mondo's customer service is legendary, but having to keep going back to them for replacement parts or checks on delivery screw-ups hurts the Mondo reputation in other ways, and unnecessarily turns what should be rightfully deserved plaudits into overhyped huff and bluff. Well, if other companies are apparently making better products at supposedly lower cost points, why not go with them then? I think customers actually would, if there was a choice. But 1/6 MOTU is still exclusively and legally Mondo's playground, and there are no other companies willing to touch this space for now, unlike the endless third-party iterations of Transformers or Turtles. Again, at this point I want to reiterate that even with all of the aforementioned factors, as a MOTU collector, we're still nonetheless privileged to have the Mondo team, who clearly love MOTU as much as we do, carve out these characters for MOTU posterity through their sheer creative will. And it's because it's unlikely that we'll see anything in this scale show up again anytime soon in the future. That's precisely what makes it imperative for Mondo to keep pushing the bar higher than their previous high. Or maybe I'm wrong and overthinking it from all the wrong angles, but I would still love to know your opinions in the comments. Do you think the Mondo MOTU figures are actually better than you expected? If not, what would you like to see improved or included for the asking price? Meanwhile, thank you again for watching, regardless of whether you agreed or disagreed with me, and thank you even more if you hit the bell and subscribe. Till the next time.